Hello, welcome to Compassion Life Builders family. My name is Michael Meyer. I want to tell you about an amazing true story of God working miracles in a person's life. And I know firsthand because the person is me. And really this story that I'm going to share with you is a story that took me beyond belief, from a place of believing in God. It's really kind of a knowing about Him, but on my own terms, to a personal relationship, knowing Him intimately. So for a moment, try to imagine God intervening in your life in a personal way. All of a sudden, just like you're listening to me, watching me on video, God showed up in person, started revealing Himself and communicating with you. It's a game changer. It's more than mind-blowing. It alters the perceptions of reality in every way. It was complete, total whiteout from the darkness that obscured the view of him. So let me begin. What I want to do is encourage you that God is real in a way where He makes life better. He's done supernatural things for me, practical things. For over 34 years, I've put this all to the test, so I have some experience behind what I'm talking about. And I know it's real because I've done exactly that. And I've learned over the years, there's ways to have God work in your life more, there's ways to have Him work less. And it all really has a beginning. So I want to share my beginning. My beginning to know God really was the setup to appreciate Him, which was from the bad experiences of life. Okay? There's a scripture that Jeremiah speaks about knowing us while we're yet in the womb. And at the age of 3 years old, when I was playing outside and I was pushed out in the middle of a street and hit by a speeding car, it altered my life. It changed my life. It made me chronically ill with severe asphyxic asthma. I had spent many weeks over the years in and out of pediatric hospitals. They tried to manage it. They tried to figure out what the triggers were. I was diagnosed with over 200 plus allergies, with hypertension. In addition to all of that, they gave me multiple drugs to keep me alive. The doctors kept me alive for sure. Would have been dead, but they kept me alive. What was interesting though, over the course of years being a child, growing up in Chicago, if you're sick and you're not fitting in with the normal crowd, you can be bullied, all right? And so I certainly was bullied, and I couldn't engage in the regular activities like the traditional sports that so many were able to because of the asthma. In addition to this, irritating this scenario, my brother actually was great at sports and went on to play professional baseball. And so it just, something that should have been making me happier was just making it all the more real of a problem with my life that I couldn't do certain things. So I'm sharing that to let you know that there was a darkness, a despair, a depression, a view of life that was very painful. And the pain was real. And the pain wouldn't ever go away because it had to do with the way I looked at life. And so I saw things in a very realistic view that included death, sickness, broken dreams. When I was in the hospital, I remember being in oxygen tents, not breathing for a couple of weeks, with every heartbeat and struggling to gasp a little breath. I could feel the pain throbbing throughout every cell of my body, under my fingernails. It was horrible. it led me to a place to where I longed for death. Death would have been welcome, death would have been appreciated, because my thought it would have put me out of the pain. And so then being introduced to all these medications and drugs, that become a normal part of my life, in and out of hospitals. Growing up in Chicago, there's things that are very prevalent, and of course drugs and alcohol. So I was introduced to those things at an early age. By the time I was in high school, I was experiencing the things that are killing people, the drugs and the alcohol, in an ongoing, increasing way. And it was just part of the normal life, because I was already doing the medications and drugs already to manage my asthma. And I found that it did kind of ease some of the pain, and it was something that I had no real awareness of how bad it really is. So as I got older, the problems at home took its toll, and my mom became sick. She was my main caretaker. She became chronically ill with bipolar. It's a horrible disease. I pause just because I remember so well the changes in her life, and going to the psychiatrist and getting medications and trying to get this horrible situation managed, and it just continued to decline. I saw changes in personality. It's very disturbing, and she was my main caretaker, and of course I was very anxious and worried, because I loved my mom. I wanted things to be well for her, but they continued to deteriorate and decline until eventually she committed suicide. And I was the one who was finding her, and there was several attempts, helped her a couple of times, but the last time I wasn't there. Okay, so when we buried her, something that was revealed to me was my heart had been seared in such a way I could not cry. I had no tears. Very unusual. It was a numbness that was beyond numbness. There was a deadness. It was real. There was a darkness to it. And so the life that I had been exposed to now became the pursuit, because of the emotional pain that was unleashed in my life at that time. It drove me to do things I didn't understand. So by the time I was 18 years old, I was going out, living out on my own, doing things, seeing things, and got me into a lifestyle that certainly exposed me to the criminal element, the vice world, Chicago and beyond. I did some traveling, and could have been dead, should have been dead, would have been dead, if it were not for God helping me in ways that I had no idea He was actually doing that. Then in 1985, on a New Year's Eve, I overdosed with a massive amount of drugs. And I used to do massive amounts of drugs. I didn't care. My body had become tolerant. It was a way of living for me. At this point, the conglomeration of all the various things that I did was just too much for my body. I started convulsing, fell on the floor, and as I was convulsing on the floor, my soul, my spirit ripped out of my body. And I was launching off into a unknown realm. It was dark behind me, and before me I was focused on my body as I was rising up over it. It was interesting. I had an English bulldog, and the dog seemed to sense that maybe I had died or left. He came running and jumped on my lifeless body, and when the dog hit my body, my spirit, my soul went back in and launched back into my body. And at that instant, the dog with its big head, he's an English bulldog, licking my face because I had come back. I had an epiphany. I realized that God was the one who created this animal. So that was strange, and as soon as I thought about God, I had an epiphany. Another strange experience. Everything that was the reality of what I was looking at, the dog, disappeared, and we call this an open vision, and I saw something entirely different. And it was vivid, it was clear, it wasn't foggy, and I remember it, and it was an image of me in ministry, and I wasn't a Christian, and it was very disturbing. And then just like it instantly appeared, it instantly disappeared, and there I was again with the dog on top of me in my room on the floor, trying to figure out what just happened on this New Year's Eve. I was sober. It instantly got rid of every kind of buzz feeling, and I was in shock. Said nothing, didn't go out that night, which was very strange. Stopped drinking for a couple of weeks. All right. Had no answers. Didn't know what that was about. 5 months later, May, had reconstructive knee surgery, was in the hospital. While I was there was in the room with me a born-again Christian black man who had back surgery, bone fusion for his vertebrae. He was prone, supposed to be in bed, and he was always smiling and in a good mood, and to me that was very annoying. I laughed because I eventually couldn't take it no more and attacked him for being foolish and was pointing out his problems, and had hoped that he would have left me alone, but he wouldn't, and he kept trying to be friendly. I kept pulling the curtain. Every time the curtain would open, he's there smiling, wanting to say something. So I pointed out his problems, and he went to the foot of my bed, got out of bed, and it's very strange because he was not supposed to do that. And as he did that, something very strange happened. I saw a halo come on him. Now I've seen that maybe in movies or books, and as I saw that, I was shocked, and I thought twice, and it didn't go away. Then I started going through the list of drugs that I've done and trying to associate halos to them, and nothing. So let's put it to you like this. He had my attention, and at that point he began to tell me about Jesus. He told me about the gospel. Well, I never heard the gospel before. I heard about Jesus. I knew about Jesus. I thought I knew, but I really didn't know the gospel. Didn't know that Jesus came into this world and died on a cross to pay for my sins so I wouldn't die in my sin, and that I would have forgiveness of my sins and have the promise of everlasting life, and that I needed to respond to that love and receive him and accept him so I wouldn't die in my sin. And that was a kind of short version of it. He went at length elaborating, and the reality is I would have never listened to him. I'm not a small man, and I was quite capable of protecting myself, or making people go away, I'll put it to like that. But I was stuck in bed with a cast on my body from my hip to my toe, and I was bedridden, and I was forced to listen to this. And while I was listening, I remembering thinking how boring it would be to be a Christian, because I was like 24 years old in the prime of my life, independent, kind of coming and going as I pleased, didn't have to report to people in the traditional way. So I was content with my life. I wasn't happy with my life because I was sick, but I didn't really care about dying, because to me that was not really an issue of concern. I thought you die, you're dead, that's it, it's over. So I really just tried to live for the day and make the most of it, and I thought to myself, okay, well, this is a new thought. God is real. He's telling me about sins, and I had come to the conclusion that if I simply wait till I'm going to get killed, because I knew in the life that I was living, that's kind of what was going to happen. I was in the wrong circles with the wrong people, and it was a common thing. Many of my friends, that's exactly what happened to them. And when I was going to be in that position, I thought, well, I'll just ask God to forgive me and I'll go to heaven and I'll be okay. So life back to normal in my understanding, and on my way home from the hospital, the first thing to do, I'm hitting the liquor store and got my painkillers. And what was disturbing was, with the cast on my leg, I couldn't even take my dog out for a walk. And so on the third day after being home from the hospital, I decided I was going to man up and not do any medications or any drugs or alcohol, which was a norm. For the past 9 years, it was my routine from the moment I woke up till I passed out. 9 years. So yeah, could you say I was addicted? Yes, I would have never thought I was, but you do something for 9 years like that every day, that's the reality of it. So I was feeling the pain, and I was recognizing, that it was gonna be tough to rehab. So got out of bed, out of my bedroom, into my living room. It was a bright sunny day, sun was shining. As I was making my way across the living room, limping with the cast, there was an explosion of light. And the light was brighter than the sun that was coming through the windows. The difference was, it was all around me, it was surrounding me, and it was so intense, it was permeating my very being. And I was stunned, and I fell. And as I was falling, standing upright, before I hit the ground, from up to down, all of a sudden, with my mind trying to figure out what's going on, I felt emotions come into my heart. So when I hit the ground, I felt the feelings that I had not felt since I was a child. So then all of a sudden, the questions about what's going on became very obvious to me. I thought only God could have touched my heart to change me, to make me feel emotions again that I had been dead and cold to. At which point, immersed in this life, in this light and this intense, presence that I didn't really have words for, I started moving in such a speed. Everything was a blur. And it started making me nauseous. And so I was trying to lock my eyes on something that was not moving. And when I looked straight ahead, moving forward, there was a little opening, like a pinhole, but it was still, and there was an image at a great distance with no detail, but the thought of what I saw was God on his throne. And at that moment, the moment I thought that, I was there. I was there, instantly transported into the presence of God. Wow. Holiness. The word awesome, we use it, lightly today, but I was in the presence of something very awesome. I was in the presence of God. So awesome, God says that nobody can see him and live. He's immortal. And so something instinctively knew not to look. So I had my face down, and in the periphery, I knew God was in the background. But what I could see right in front of me was a podium with a book, and nothing else around. I was not in heaven. It was kind of like a judgment hall. Holy, 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 with the presence of God. But nothing immediately around me other than the podium with the book, and the book was open to the point of my birth, to that point in time in my life. And then God started showing me everything. And it was horrific in the fact that I was guilty of so much sin, so much selfishness, with no defense. Things I'd forgotten about, things that were certainly not righteous and certainly not holy. And certainly now all of a sudden I'm in the presence of God, and I'm thinking I'm dead. My life's over and I'm guilty of all of this he's shown me. And God is holy and heaven's real, and I'm thinking this, and I know I'm not going to heaven because I'm guilty, because God is holy and he's perfect, and I was at a loss, and nothing was said about hell, but the thought of not going to heaven, that's the that's the other thought. Well, I don't want to go to hell. Now, there was something that was very interesting about all of this. Was I sensed God was sad, and I could feel his heart and his emotion, and the disappointment that I was living a life that really was not for his purpose. And the reality is, I didn't know how far off I was, how dead I was in my sin. I was really living in the dark. I was operating out of a coffin. I was dead in every way. Now all of a sudden, God has shown me life, the purpose of life, the wasting of it, because of choices, because of sin, all of which were no legitimate excuse. And I had this hope in my heart because I didn't want to be dead forever, out of heaven. I said to God, if you let me live, I'll live for you. And that's what I said. And I was then waiting, which seemed to be like forever, because I didn't know what was going to happen. But all of a sudden, I come out of that, and I'm on the floor in my home. And my heart's racing 100 miles a minute, and I'm having cold sweats. And it was extremely intense, and I'm trying to put a handle on it, figure it out. Thought came to me, born again, because I felt like I had been given another chance by God to live. And I didn't know what to do or how to do that, but I knew what I said, and I knew what had happened was real, and I was sincere about that. And there's been no turning back, no changing ever since then. And at that point, dedicated and committed to living for God, I had to learn how to do that, because I had no clue, and I wasn't doing that at all. And so the greatest takeaway from what I'm sharing with you right now is that God gave me an opportunity. He had grace on me. He was merciful. He was loving and forgiving. Wow. He didn't need to do that, but he did. And I was so thankful. I was so grateful. Everything was different. The skies were bluer. The sun was brighter. My view and understanding of life changed completely. He was evident in everything. I could see him in ways that I was totally blind to in the past. But I didn't know much about him, so I needed to learn and grow. And God had to intervene with many more miracles to get things working so that I could live for him. Okay? And I'm going to share that part of the journey next. So I'm going to ask you to join me on part 2. Okay? The story is going to continue. This is the after Christ experience miracles that have been ongoing. Okay? But God makes it easy in the fact that whosoever will call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. You can know his love. All you need to do is reach out to him. So God set me free from so many things. There's a scripture in Psalm 107, verse 14. It says, he brought them out of darkness and the shadow of death. He brought them out of darkness and the shadow of death, and he burst their bonds apart. That's what he did for me. He'll do it for you. He loves you. He wants to encourage you. Whatever your problems, however real and overwhelmed you may be by them, don't worry about it. Give it to God. Give it to God. Ask him for help, and he will do exactly that, because he's bigger than your problems, and he has a plan for your life to solve them. In fact, he has a plan for your life to get to know him, and you'll discover in getting to know him, he is the solution with all the answers to everything in life, to make it all that is intended to be, for you to enjoy it and to be blessed and to be healthy. Lord, I ask you to bless everyone who's been listening, who tuned in. Encourage them, give them hope, that they may trust that every time they call on you, you'll be there to meet them and help them and respond in kind to demonstrate your love, because you're a God who loves us. Thank you for these blessings. In your name I pray, Jesus. Amen.